Well, good evening. Thank you for being here. My name is Bryon Scharenberg, and I lead growth at Kalles Group, and I also have the opportunity of hosting these smart cookie gatherings. So it's so fun to see all of you come out this evening. Thank you for bearing with the traffic. I heard was not fun. I made it to the office a few hours ago. We work in this building, and the traffic was horrible at 3:30, so I thank you for enduring wherever you came from to get here tonight, so we appreciate it. These Smart Cookies gatherings are intended, we designed these really as an opportunity to spark conversations around technology, leadership, and change. And really in a setting where we can have casual conversations, easy conversations, and kind of get away from some of the hype and some of the buzzwords. And I am also convinced, I'll just be honest, I think it's a great excuse for us to get together and have adult beverages and cookies as well. So that's part of the reason that you're here, I'm sure. But thank you for making it. Thank you for making it out. You know why we're here tonight. We're here to talk about AI. We're talking about leading with AI. Clearly, this is something that it's not going to be the first time that you've heard a talk or some kind of content around what we're going to be digging into tonight. But the intent is that we would be talking about the shift from leaders who are moving from being AI curious to how can we be AI enabled, or in some cases a company that is AI first, and what does that mean? And we're going to be talking about that this evening. So I want to give, before we get started and meet some of the panelists here behind me that have come out to share a little bit more about what they're doing, I want to share a few words in thanks to our sponsors. Kalles Group is our title sponsor this evening. Before we get going, I want to introduce a friend of mine. Kalles Group is doing work in the AI readiness space. Bryon Munn is my colleague who is a part of our team that is doing work helping enterprise teams become ready and trained across AI tool sets. So I'd like to give you, Bryon, just an opportunity to introduce yourself, and on behalf of Kalles Group, thank the room for coming.
Cool, yeah. Thank you, Bryon. My name is Bryon Munn. I am actually with Kalles Group, our event sponsor. And currently I'm on assignment with a global philanthropic organization of about 3,000 staff spread across 8 countries. So implementing AI is kind of a tall order at that sort of an organization. But yeah, I've been with them from the beginning. So, I like to think of it as a journey, not just that this organization is on a journey, but also all of us are on our own sort of journey through AI and upskilling. And so, yeah, this is stuff I get to nerd out about all day. I love it. If you would like to nerd out with me about it tonight, I would love to talk to you. No matter where you are in your journey, if you're just dipping your toe in, or AI curious, or or somewhere in the middle, or not even sure if you want to go down that journey, come talk to me. Cool. Thanks. I'll hand it back to Bryon.
Give Bryon a hand, if you would. Thank you, sir. Part of the intent around these Smart Cookies events that we host is that what you're going to hear tonight is you're going to hear insight from people that are working in the space and doing some of this work kind of in the messy middle, I'll say, perhaps, if that's fair, of AI. But a part of this, the value is not just sitting and listening. The value is actually talking with one another, having conversations before, after. So as we'll have an opportunity to hear from our panelists this evening, they'll give us some things that we can chew on and talk with one another about. But I do encourage you, find Bryon, find one another, learn how each of you are involved in utilizing and where you're at in your journey with AI throughout the rest of the evening. So with that said, we're going to get going here, guys. Over the last year, AI has been moving quickly. I think it's moved, in my mind, it's moved from something that has gone from more of an individual journey. How do I use AI as a tool to develop content, or maybe summarize my meeting notes, or help me draft emails and move quicker? But it's entered into a conversation of how do we as teams build around it and become more capable, more efficient? How do we become empowered and a better organization using this technology? So the shift is, I think it's seeing this not as just a sidekick or a tool, like the title of our event is this evening, but how does work actually happen? Where are people thriving? Where are they getting stuck? What are some of the things that they're dealing with as challenges? So those are all things that we're going to dig into tonight on our panel. I do want to make one quick note before we dive in, and although I am excited to hear from each of you and the insights, we've been having good conversations in advance of this evening, but I do want to say, just as a note, that this does not reflect the entire range of perspectives. Each of you, very bright individuals, but this room is a part of what we want this night to be about. So even as the panelists up here don't reflect the entire range of perspectives that we had hoped to include, as we continue the conversation, women leaders, underrepresented leaders in technology, we want to include all of those voices because AI is for everyone. And so I say that not as an apology, but really as a reminder for us that as we continue the conversation with one another tonight, there are many voices and many perspectives that we need to value. So with that said, I do want to dig in and meet each one of these gentlemen next to me. First up, Mike Anderson, here on my left. Mike is the co-founder of AILayer and the Independent AI Institute, among many other things that you've been involved with as well. Mike is focusing on building agentic, decentralized AI. So very cool stuff that you're working on. So systems that don't just respond to prompts, but can reason, act, and collaborate on their own. And Mike's background is in launching startups. He's launched creative agencies. He's worked with venture-backed incubators. Mike, I think you bring a little bit of a futurist lens to our conversation tonight.
Fair.
Okay, that's good. Also, a fun fact about Mike, he has served as a delegate to the United Nations Global Data Platform of Machine Learning Ops. So, Mike, glad you're here tonight with us. I'm going to keep moving along the couch here. Zach Koch is a colleague in my building. Zach and I work in the same building together, but Zach is the CEO and founder of Fixie AI, who is producing Ultravox. And Ultravox is a voice-first AI agent that can reason, communicate, take action in real time. Zach and his team are doing some really cool stuff. Prior to building Ultravox, Zach has led teams with Google, Shopify. He's been driving innovation across AI, mobile, developer platforms for many years. And Zach brings a lot of insight into how interface design and real-time intelligence are shaping the future of AI-powered user experience. So, is that fair?
Yeah, sounds great.
You're a smart dude, man. You got to own it.
I don't know about
Just own it. Yeah. Glad you're here, Zach. Eli Coon, all the way on my left over here. Eli is a senior product manager at Microsoft, and he's leading work with Copilot Studio. So Eli is very involved in Copilot Studio, which, if you're not familiar, is Microsoft's low-code platform for building AI agents and workflows. A lot of Eli's work focuses on evaluating and improving the quality of AI behavior. So how can we improve those user experiences? Those are a lot of the questions that Eli and his team are working on. Prior to Microsoft, Eli has worked in management consulting, product management. He's also co-founded an education technology startup. So also very smart, very interesting dude, each of you guys. And fun fact about you, Eli and his family are awaiting the birth of their first son later this summer. So kudos. I want to start with each of you. We'll start here with you, Mike. Start out on a light note. I want to think, I didn't ask you this in advance. When you were a kid growing up, did you say, I want to build artificial intelligence? Like, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Yeah, I mean, so when I was a kid, my dad was a salesperson for Apple. His office was literally like 8 blocks that way at the computer store. And he sold Apple computers to all the schools from California up to Vancouver. And so I grew up, both my parents were startup people. They had kids when they were like 21. So I was like basically a kid with my parents traveling around to their startup things. And they would put me on stage and I would do like computer animation on an original Mac, right? And I would show off and I'd be like 6 or 7 and they would use me as kind of like the person that sold. And so I basically still do that, where every day I wake up and I build cool shit and I show people like, hey, look what's possible with technology if you just try. And then people are like, oh, we can do this. And then companies form around it. And then that's why I'm part of so many things, is I help people accomplish their goals.
That's so fun.
Yeah.
You've got a cool story, Mike. That's awesome. Zach, what about you? What do you want to be when you grow up?
Well, you know wait, is this on? Hello? Okay, oh yeah. The first words out of my mouth were large language models. So this is broken.
Here.
Yeah, you know, what can I say? I popped out and I was like, LLM. No, I had, like any boy wanted to be like, I feel like a professional baseball player. And at some point in high school, you realize that's not in the cards. But I felt like I liked computers, so that was the backup plan. No, professional baseball player was it. And then there was a brief moment where I was like, I'm going to be a brain surgeon and have 16 kids. That was what I was sort of famous for. I now have a single child, and I'm not a brain surgeon. So anyway.
Yet, right?
Yet. You're right.
What's possible with your AI agents?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
We're going to go there.
Who's going to sign up to be the first person to get LLM-powered brain surgery in the room?
Not me. Let's continue. Eli, what about you, my friend? What did you want to be when you grew up?
So I didn't know that it had to do with software necessarily, although I liked computers as well. But I wanted to be an inventor of some kind. And I remember being probably 10 or 12, and I'd sketch different ideas that I had. And I had one that I thought was just killer, totally independent. No one had ever seen it before. It was this bed that you could drive around in. So you could see the world without ever having to leave the comfort of your own covers. And I thought that this was just the best thing ever, and people would kind of sigh and pat me on the head and say, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Until I think all my dreams were crushed when I first laid eyes on a Winnebago, and I realized that this thing had already existed for decades and decades. So it didn't crush my dreams too much, though. I still got to build cool stuff, and like these guys now, it's more on the software side.
Well, that's awesome. I love the creativity. Love the creativity from the room. Well, where we're going to start tonight is we've got a few different topics that we're going to cover, and we're going to start on looking at AI from an individual lens, the individual spark. Where can it begin? And we'll move throughout our evening as individual to teams, and then what are some things we need to be cautious about? What are some things that it maybe can't do for us or can't do yet for us? So beginning, the individual spark, this idea of where does AI use start? I want to start with you, Zach, but this idea that real impact of individuals moving from beyond just playing with tools to really solving real problems with AI. And in some of your space, I'm curious, building voice-first AI with Ultravox, you've got a track record of driving innovation. When you look at individual use cases today, how people are using it, what are you seeing that's the most creative or productivity-enhancing uses?
Yeah, you even said this question ahead of time. I feel like I should have a great answer queued up. Yeah, I think that what's wild, I mean, everyone knows this, is that like what the answer was 6 months ago is probably not even the answer today, right? It's just been, like we started to get serious like back in 2022 with LLMs, and feels like those were the stone ages compared to what we have today. And even now with like the models that have come out in the last couple of months, things that seemed impossible like 6 months ago are now very possible today. I do think that a lot of people are finding, I myself maybe as a proxy, I feel like use and increasingly rely on LLMs and AI every single day for critical parts of like the workflow. Like one I was very dubious of for a long time was actually writing, because LLMs were producing very LLM sounding text and stuff like that. And so I was very resilient to use it for things, or like resistant to use it for things like email writing or writing docs or writing blog posts. But I've increasingly found it to be applicable where like my gut instinct is like, I should just do it. And then I followed up with, actually, let me just try really quickly with AI first. And whether that's like analysis, right? You're like, oh, there's no way it's gonna get this, but like maybe it will. And I find sort of having this like, but maybe it will attitude is actually very powerful, because you like allow yourself to be surprised where the LLM sort of exceeds your expectations. And there's so many great tools emerging now all the time. I was just sort of taking before this like stock of the different applications I've installed over the last probably just like 2 months. Like Lex.page was a new one for writing, basically, with like AI-assisted writing flows at its core. I think it was sort of things like new analysis tools, where it's all about like AI-powered analysis for things. I just realized I haven't like written a line of like SQL code actually for analysis in now 3 months, because I just have gotten so used to just asking the LLM like, hey, here's the database table. Like, I haven't done this in a long time. Just like find me this thing I want to know, and it produces the results pretty reliably through this iterative process. And so, yeah, I just feel like there's so many. I think the most important thing is just this like, let me try it mindset, and then you iterate with it. And like sometimes you're disappointed and you realize, oh, I'll have to do it the old-fashioned way with my own brain. But I feel like it's become this incredible tool where it's like, if nothing else, there's always like the just going from zero to something is always hard. And I find AI helps you sort of leap past the zero phase very quickly, even if it's just like an iterative first step. And there's just so many tools emerging constantly. It's actually like head spinning. But the worst case is just throw it in ChatGPT and like see what you get back out. It's really become incredible, I think.
I like that. Just your point of the speed of iteration, kind of moving from zero to getting past that hurdle. That's good. Eli, I'm curious, like you're in a bit of a different space within Copilot Studio. What are you seeing from Copilot Studio users from within the domain that you're in that's interesting?
Well, first off, man, I love hearing you talk, because the creativity and the ideas, it's just awesome. I'm probably going to bring a little bit more of the sort of corporate enterprise, perspective. So this may be a little bit more tactical as opposed to inspirational. The most common use case that I see is still what I would call the fact-seeking or information-seeking use case. I would describe this as basically AI-powered search or AI-enhanced search. That's a problem that folks are still trying to solve better. Two like specific scenarios that I see. One is I work with a marketing team, so we build features. They kind of write blogs and announce them. And so they have to understand what's going on with our technical documentation and turn that into really plain language. And so I know a couple of those folks who have created agents that are grounded in our technical documentation to basically help them understand and explain that. The other one that I've really liked is sort of anybody who does any sort of project management and has to track updates from people, has to stay on top of things. This is a really, really great use case, because they can also kind of ground an agent in all of the different updates, all the artifacts, right? The PowerPoints, the emails, the messages, and just ask, hey, what's the latest update on X? No going and finding the person who knows the information. You can just get it instantly. And then that becomes even more powerful with folks who add a little bit of an autonomous flavor, right? Where now you're asking the agent to go follow up on your behalf and track, do I have the updates that I need from each person? So really, it's a very, it's still a really nascent space in terms of people adopting AI for personal productivity. I think it's limited by two things. The first is just people's imagination and creativity, and the second is grounding data. And that's a theme that I'm probably going to come back to a lot tonight, is the importance of grounding data. But those are the most common scenarios that I'm seeing today.
Okay. Curious in your space, Mike. I mean, Eli mentioned it kind of gave a nod to the autonomous world a bit. I mean, what do you think? Is there anything that's getting too much attention, not enough attention at the individual level?
Well, I don't think we have a narrative of what's actually happening right now. Like, we're in this exponential takeoff, right? And like when something's exponential, so like if you have a penny and then on day 2 you have 2 pennies and then you have 4, on day 31 you have 5.1 million pennies. But like you're there on week 3 and you're like, I don't think this is going anywhere. And then on week 4 it's just take off. And we're sitting, like we are like on this trajectory. So like right now, you have to understand that AI is more like your child than it is your tool. And it is in the same way that humans domesticated cows and dogs became our ears at night and our hunting buddies and those sorts of things. AI is your child. If you say, I don't want that child, you're going to be very ineffective at any kind of economic production in the future. And so like there's this grief phase that takes place in people where they're like, oh fuck. And then they're like, I hate this. And then they're like, okay, I can do this. And then they're like, oh, this is kind of fun. And then they realize we're all agents already. A corporation is literally an information processing algorithm that's designed to turn agents into money, shareholder value. And so when you actually look at OKRs or job descriptions, you look at all these things, you're like, oh, these are just like agentic workflows where I'm the agent and I'm being managed. And so when you can view it like that, you're like, okay, what's the thing I hate the most about my job? And then just go talk to somebody that knows what they're talking about. You're like, I hate this about my job. Could you spend 20 minutes with me and help me think about it? I'll bet you learn more in that because you actually have pain. And when you have pain, you do something about it. So I would say find your pain.
Mike, you're kind of blowing my mind a little bit right now. I wasn't ready for this to start off. I was hoping we'd get there 30 minutes from now, but thank you. Do you need another beer? Maybe. I think it's like I'm already entering the grief phase that you referenced. No, I think that's, what a lot of what you're describing and kind of getting back to this individual spark level is, I think I view it as this awareness phase, where you talk about the bell curve maybe, or, what we're on right now, this exponential growth. And this room, we've probably experienced some of these things. I know an earlier conversation I had with you around this topic was thinking about how do I take what's in my brain and drop it into a server so that I can have an agent doing this for me. So before we go down that rabbit hole too much, I do want to shift from, there is this futurist lens to where could it go, but we're still in that spot of we've seen the implications of incredibly, massive increases in productivity, massive increases in here's something that can help me with a lot of these keeping the lights on, workflows and activities. But how then do we move that from an individual level to enabling our teams to do it? And so I think this moving from just a power user of AI to an AI-enabled team, so shifting that lens. I'm curious, I want to start with you on this, Eli, but when you go from scaling how work happens, and scaling introduces friction, introduces misalignment. There's going to be new leadership challenges. So moving into that as kind of a new way of work, I'm curious, you're working on the platform level, you're helping teams move from exploration to real adoption. So what changes when AI moves from just a single user to now a whole team is building around it? What are some things that you've seen?
So first off, you have kind of an information security nightmare, because now you've just exposed all of this data to all these different people when previously it was limited to that one person. But more seriously, we've talked about the benefits to the individual, and so you can just multiply that, right? So you take a single agent for a single person, saves them 2 hours a week, 100 hours a year, right? Now multiply that by all the people that they share that agent with. Now multiply that by all the people who are building agents, and things add up quickly. Now that's a really aspirational future, and when we look at how organizations are adopting AI today, at least in the enterprise space, it's much more around 1 to 2 really sort of centralized bots that everybody uses, or agents that everybody uses. So one example that we recently did was T-Mobile just did a big launch of a Copilot Studio agent where they built basically like a recommendation engine for whatever promotions their customers were eligible for. So this is an agent for T-Mobile's frontline workers. And previously they had to gather information from a customer, go to a back room, check what they were eligible, and come back. And when they looked at their sales conversion funnel, they realized that that moment when the salesperson leaves the room and ends that conversation was just crushing them in terms of converting those leads. So by doing this, they were able to roll out, and now they've got 80,000 people every month using this app and closing more deals as a result of it. So I think that's the kind of thing you're seeing more on the kind of 1 to 2 really effective apps, started at the individual level often and then scaled to many people once that sort of proof of concept has happened. But so that's one example that we've seen.
That's a good example. I mean, curious with I guess moving forward. Mike, I want to go back to you. I'm a little bit scared, to be honest. I don't want to be scared though. From your experience, Mike, I mean, what are some structures or systems that you've seen? I know you guys are building some of this right now with your company, but what are structures or systems that you've seen help orgs scale effectively? So get past some of those friction moments. Are there? Talk to me about the systems that you guys are building and what you're seeing.
Got it. I'm going to try to figure out how to answer this question the right way, because we're right not building B2B right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm talking about this as like how I would actually lead a team.
Yeah.
And so what I would be doing is I would be seeing each person in my team as an agent that needs more agency. Like right now, generally, like they do very rote tasks. Most people are trained to actually not have high agency in a corporation. And what I would do is I would set goals and I would ask them to identify their opportunities. And then when I found somebody who was really good at that, I would make that person the hero and I would celebrate them. Because AI right now is a human problem because the technology is really good. But the people change much slower. And so I would be developing that culture of expectation of agency and expectation of tool usage. Like a lot of the tech CEOs now are sending stuff out to their employees basically saying like, you need to basically be hiring agents to do your job, and you need to be promoting yourself constantly. Because if you're not doing that, the agent's going to take your boss's job, and you're going to work for your agent, or not work.
Some of what I'm hearing you talk about is in terms of the system is a bit of a culture change.
Yes.
In terms of
Big time.
So one of the things that's effective is people need to see their role within their organization perhaps differently.
And they got to feel that it's safer to take risks to change than it is to stay the same. Because if they see that I can politically pocket veto this, I can sit back and I can let the other people do that, and productivity should be rising across the organization, I can hide, right?
Yeah.
And time again, you see that, and then you got to lay that person off or deal with whatever your HR process is.
Yeah.
And so, like an expectation and just like a reality of what we're dealing with here. Like this isn't happening in 3 years. It's happening like right now.
That's interesting. Yeah, so not necessarily a framework or a step-by-step process type system, but more so culture change. And I'm curious.
Because every day there's new tools. Every
Yeah.
single
Yeah.
day, and if tomorrow there'll be a new one.
Zach, how about you? I mean, how do you see behavior, culture change? How's that influence people embracing AI from day one? What are you guys seeing with Ultravox?
Oh man, I think from the Ultravox lens, it's like slightly different. I guess I have a couple thoughts maybe. I think number one is that like I think it's hard to get reliable, great results as an individual right now with AI. It has these moments of brilliance and this moment of stupidity, right? And it's hard to get reproducibly great results all of the time. And so when you scale that to an organization, like typically we scale organizations when we have a working model. Right? And so I think the challenge and like sort of the chaos emerges when you don't know how to get like reliably great results as the individual, and you try to scale it at the organizational level. Sort of weird things kind of happen sometimes, I think. And so most of what I feel like I've seen is like people sort of really encouraging getting over the individualized hump, and then trying to build rough tools in place to sort of share what's working for you. Like Shopify, where I sort of came from before starting the company. I think they built a lot of internal tools for like sharing your prompt. Like, hey, I got a great outcome. Here's a place where you can share your prompt with everyone else and share the result that you got. And then other people can then share versions of that prompt. They're gonna be like, okay, well, I tried it and I got a stupid result, but then I modified it in this way and I got a good result. And they're trying to like lean into the fact that there's this weird stochastic random system behind it all, but it's also very useful. And so I do think that's like part of the challenge right now. I do think like Claude, ChatGPT, there's sort of, you mentioned this earlier, like context matters a lot for large language models. Like there are these pre-trained cores that are stuck in time from their training data. And so the way that we make them useful to us is that we like shove data that they might not have at training time into them when we ask them questions. And so what you need to get reliable outcomes and shared states, you need sort of shared context states across the organization. And no one's quite cracked this nut yet, is what I would say. I think we have like some glimmers of hope, but it is challenging. And so I think a lot of organizations just sort of encouraging like sharing rapidly and stuff like that. And like, you know, from an Ultravox angle, I mean, we mostly build real-time voice agents. And so I think to your point, I think people are sort of seeing like, okay, how can I like remove myself from this annoying task? Here's a great example. I was at the dentist 2 days ago because I've neglected to floss well, as I do.
The only one in this room.
Yeah, exactly.
You're the only one here that's neglected to floss
I look at
well.
the floss every morning, but I don't. I ignore its calling, and so I had a small cavity I had to get filled. And so I noticed that, like, okay, the receptionist who does a million other things also has to call my old dentist to get like the films to get them done, and like, and I was like, you know, I think you could probably automate that. Like, you could build a voice agent to go out and like fetch. So to your point, like she was like, oh, do you think I could like not have to do this? Like, I think you could probably automate this. Like, maybe I'll help you as a small thing on the side. Just I think it would be a fun trial. It's like automate yourself out of this other job so that you can go focus on higher level tasks. I think is sort of really, and that's kind of where voice is right now. It's like even like a layer behind. Like, you sort of have pinnacle of technology with agentic LLMs that are kind of slow running. Voice all has to happen very, very fast, and so it's a little bit slower there. But I do think that that's the trend for sure.
Interesting. Yeah, continuing this, so moving from individuals that are, you know, we've got some power users, some people that are curious, some people that have really feel like they've harnessed it. Organization becomes excited about it, let's roll it out, we're going to embed this within the teams, we're starting to experience some friction, doesn't work quite as well as we want it to. But then really thinking about operationalizing it. I want to go back to you, Mike. You talked about this idea of a worker who can identify something, or a team perhaps identify a pain, right? A pain in their workflow, or a pain in their their job or the team's function. So autonomous agents, the idea is that they can be a helper alongside that individual or that team. And if an organization wants to operationalize it, is that even realistic right now? How close are we to, you know, seeing the autonomous agent as a helper to really a true teammate who's doing those things effectively, solving those pains consistently? Are we anywhere close, in your opinion?
There's a lot of domain-specific solutions, especially like engineering right now is totally making that transition first. Right, so you've got engineering right now is in that process where like the new OpenAI systems connect straight into your GitHub, and they actually are pushing proposed code changes where your engineering managers can actually like merge into branch. So like at that point in time, the human is literally going from I cast my spell with words, I get code that does that, I check does it work, and it actually goes into production. So like that's happening at a legal level. That's happening for a lot of these domain-specific areas, and so it's hard to talk generally. But all the technology is at a spot right now. If you have empowered individuals that have a cultural expectation, where they should be able to at least 30% increase their productivity across the board, but they're not doing it because you don't have the right company culture. They don't have the right growth mindset in place, and they don't understand the tools yet.
Eli, maybe you can perhaps gut check me on this figure. I want to say, was it 2023 or 2024 that Microsoft said, was it 40% of code was written by Copilot?
Yeah, Satya gave the statistic. I think it was 30%. I actually think it was this year that he said that.
Okay.
But yeah, he certainly said that.
So in terms of
now they're saying like closer to 80-90% of the at Y Combinator's latest batch.
So significant amounts of, in the engineering space, code is already being written. So yes, it is being operationalized. From specifically what you're seeing, what are some other signals that tell you that AI is actually being embedded in teams? Are you aware of organizations that have done well with operationalizing it?
So measuring the effectiveness of AI out in the wild or in live production is a really, really difficult problem to solve. So in traditional software, we have all these different signals like click-through rate. That's one a lot of people are familiar with, or different measures of task success, or even you can look at telemetry about when did somebody drop off this flow. AI is a little bit different because for various data privacy reasons, very good data privacy reasons, we can't see any sorts of conversation transcripts between the agent and the user. And it makes it very difficult to know whether AI is actually working. And so the advice that I always give leaders who are looking to adopt AI is that two things. First off, you have to look at it from a data-driven mindset. And so, I work with a data science organization. For us, that would mean probably some kind of A/B test or a longitudinal study where you're taking snapshots over a period of time. But the metric that you have to track, right, is some kind of financial metric. So there was a long time where, the AI hype meant that you could say, oh yeah, this will give you more productivity or whatever, and you didn't have to quantify it. But at least for us, that's really changing. And so that means quantifying the value that AI brings either through some kind of productivity, probably captured by revenue, or some kind of efficiency through a reduced cost. And like we have to now think in terms of these ROI metrics, not in terms of things like engagement. And AI companies are equally as responsible now for proving their value by showing that ROI. And so I think like senior leaders have wised up to the promise of AI, and now they're asking specifically to see what is the financial benefit so that I can justify the return on my investment.
Yeah, it's interesting in terms of is it fair to say that an aspect of operationalizing AI across an organization, is there a different calculus or calculation of how do we measure this? So in terms of the metrics are changing, I'm curious, Zach, from your point of view, are you seeing anything on that front in terms of measurability of like effectiveness? Is that something that, how are you guys seeing organizations measure how well they're using the products that you're developing?
I think for us, in some dimensions, it's actually really easy in some cases. Like for example, natural, I think, fit for early fits of voice in particular are like frontline customer service. Mm-hmm. And so you, as you can imagine, any organization tracks very closely the costs associated with that. Right, and so you have a team of a team of humans. Their throughput for so many calls with so many resolutions is so much, and you can very easily track that to a dollar amount. I think you're seeing a lot of take like United Airlines. If anyone calls United right now to rebook your flight, like most likely you'll be on like a 30-minute wait time minimum to talk to a human, up to like 2 hours at their peak load time right now. This sucks for everyone, I think, and so some of these are very easily trackable metrics. I think cases where there's sort of obvious pain, obvious costs, I think are very simple for us to measure. And it's usually not us; it's usually like our customers. And usually they're coming take one of our customers is a company called RealPage. Like a multi-billion-dollar company that manages like a huge amount of real estate portfolios. Yeah, their average wait time to talk to a customer service help or representative, they said is 75 minutes right now. You're just sitting there, and so their goal is like, okay, can we offload 30% of that like onto an easily answerable question where AI is a great fit? And so sometimes I think it's really easy to find the measurable win, and other times I think it's incredibly gnarly, and it's very hard to explain it. So
yeah. I think what I'm hearing is one of the takeaway for the leaders in the room that are thinking about doing this is prior to rolling it out, we do need to have an understanding of how will we measure success. And it's not just a flashy tool that promises that it's going to make life easier, but really how will we measure it? And in some cases, that might be a new measurement. It might be a new aspect of how we need to think about that. You guys have all
just a
alluded.
perspective. You might not. I don't know if you actually need a measure at the. I mean, some cases are very. If you're ultimately trying to transform an organization from like one that has not very been AI forward to an organization that is AI forward, I think you can get stuck in a bit of paralysis trying to figure out how we're going to measure the thing effectively. Yeah. And I actually think that's like largely an anti-pattern when you're trying to affect change. Oftentimes, is you're too concerned with like the how will we know instead of like. To hell with it, let's just try it. And I actually think that like most people should probably just say to hell with it, let's try it, and then you'll work backwards into how to measure it later. Because I think you'll sort of it'll be fairly obvious if it's working or not. It's sort of my rough take, and
Yeah.
you'll figure out how to quantify that more over time. That doesn't work for all cases, but if you're trying to like transform an organization internally to sort of be like, hey, this AI wave is happening whether we like it or not, how are we going to rise to the challenge? I don't think you have the time to sort of think thoughtfully about all ways that you might measure it perfectly, given all the challenges. Not saying you shouldn't, just saying it's very
Yeah.
hard, and I wouldn't block on it.
Doesn't all innovation happen safely, though? Without
Yes, and in
risks?
very clear progressive
Okay,
order,
that's-
right?
yeah,
We
yeah.
make our plan, and that's how all progress works. Exactly.
Okay, that's fair. Well, so we'll take your input with a grain of salt then. I mean, on that front, the idea of risk, the idea of limits, the idea of AI is, some of these tools and technologies aren't perfect. What are and I think that this idea of what guardrails do we need to consider, and thinking about scaling, thinking about experimenting, rolling this out in your organization. I think the idea of guardrails. What is it that an organization needs to think about? Eli, with you, I mean, firsthand, you're talking about AI scaling across an organization, seeing the T-Mobile example as one, rolling out these agents. Is there a real world limitation in your instance within Copilot or conversational AI that you wish more leaders understood before they go all in?
Yes, and I think I mentioned it before. I want to come back to it. It's grounding data. It's grounding data and it's integrations.
What do you mean by that? I mean, level set us on what do you mean by
Sure.
grounding data?
Yeah, sorry. So grounding data is exactly, I think, what Zach was describing earlier. It's information that you take in order to allow your agent to do its job. So the most common scenario is a search scenario. Grounding data would be the information that you are searching over to get a result. You would, the simple pattern is you would like search over a bunch of stuff, you would extract some like snippets, you would feed that to an LLM that would then generate a response based on those snippets.
Okay.
That's like the traditional retrieval pattern. So I would say the grounding data is absolutely the biggest limitation. That said, the thing that I think most leaders are maybe not anticipating that they should is the need that they have to own their own AI quality evaluation infrastructure. And this goes a little against what Zach said in terms of maybe what kinds of measurements you really need to have in place before you move forward. And I do agree, like you need to have a bias for action. But if you do not invest in your own data sets, right, and making sure that they're representative of what your customers are actually asking. If you don't invest in the automation pipeline so that you can run all of those queries on a recurring basis and the dashboards so that you can actually see the reporting, you're going to have absolutely no idea what your agent is saying when you release it off into the wild. So I would really say like leaders should be thinking about how can we create infrastructure for measuring the quality of our agents and making sure that they're actually doing what they're supposed to be doing, as opposed to giving hallucinated answers or not answering the user's question or any of these other things that don't ultimately help. So it would be that the need for investment in those measurement tools.
Yeah, ensuring that the quality of the data, some of the systems that they rely on, is actually in a good state to be able to running some of the operations. Is that right?
Exactly, because once the genie's out of the bottle, right? It's very hard to put it back in, and even if you do, your agent said what it said. If it said the wrong thing because you had the wrong data or because you didn't have the right setting, like it's already out there. A lot of folks pay attention to, I want to be on the latest model. I want to have it fine-tuned. I want to have my parameters. What's my top P, my top K, my temperature? None of that is anywhere near as important as the inputs that you feed the system. That is by far the most important factor in determining what is your end output going to be.
Yeah, Mike, in your opinion, so this idea of we have limitations. Are there things that should still belong to us? Or do you see within certain organization systems that you're working with where people do end up technically out over their skis, or So what are some examples of that?
Okay, we'll start at the low level. If you give people these tools, they are going to do stupid things with them. They are going to put in data that they shouldn't, and they are going to hand data over to Google or whoever, and it's going to just be metadata or whatever. But like your most important information is going to go train your competitors. Number 2 on that is also they're going to have, they're going to think they have superpowers because they can put something in and they get something out that feels long. And maybe they're used to, I write long papers because I know people won't read them, and then I get good reviews because everybody's like, oh, he does good papers and he formats them nice. That will happen at scale, and you'll start seeing people like act like they think they're lawyers, or they think like, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, they're like quoting, where did you get this from? And then you're like, oh, this is just, you literally haven't thought about this. You put the answer in, you copied it, and you sent it, because literally in your job you don't get feedback. So much of that happens. Then you go all the way up to the corporate level, and I think Amazon as a culture, these papers that they have for management meetings are absolutely fucking brilliant. And you should really think as an organization, your organization's probably going to die if it doesn't change dramatically in the next 5-10 years. And so what they've done though, at a management level, because it's actually easier to automate these jobs, even though they don't want to put budget into it, than it is these jobs. These are like specialist agents that are all vertical and hyper-specific. These ones up here, though, like if you had a paper about every major project that's going on, and if you operationally actually understood your organization, even if it's 10,000 Word documents, you can put those into an LLM, have it find differences between them, have it cluster together the things that make sense. And those are all things that humans understand really well. Like, hey, just write down what your business objectives are. I bet you that there's not alignment in your team, and I bet you an agent could show you that in a week.
Interesting. Yeah, I want to keep us. I'm realizing, for the sake of time, I want to keep us moving here, and move us into our last topic. And I think it's an important one, and it's the idea of what are the human moments, right? Are there human moments that should stay human moments? Do we need to exercise restraint in what we use some of these technologies for, even if we could, or even if we can? To go to you, Zach. I mean, how do you think modeling human-first leadership should happen in an AI-heavy culture? What does that look like? I mean, what are some things that should remain human-first? How do we think about that?
I don't know if I think that the framing is what things should remain human first, like from some like philosophical or ethical standpoint. I think that like we should like let the technology get as good as it gets and be honest about what it's good at and what it's not good at. I think right now, I'll say a couple of things. Like humans have taste. Like first and foremost, we have taste, we have ideas, we have context, we have all these things that LLMs don't have. LLMs are sort of, they're really incredible because they're like these, we've managed to take like all of the world's information and compress it into this relatively tiny thing, and like that's a pretty remarkable human achievement. And then we're able to get it back out in text form, which is like, wow, I can't believe that works. But they don't have taste. They don't have a sense of like what emotion you want, like when someone experiences your application. And so I don't know if that's like I wouldn't say to me that's a principled thing, though. This must be in the domain of humans. It's just honest about the fact that like LLMs don't have it. Yeah. And if I'm a little bit negative that I think the path to get there is quite difficult. And so I think that I think that really what to me like if leadership is honest about is like you're allowed to figure out the bullshit part of your job, which is probably fairly, we all have it, right? We all know there's like this thing I would love not to do. And it's probably not the fun part where your creative brain is working, right? I mean, we all love the parts of our job that are like where you're working with humans and you're brainstorming and you're sort of throwing out ideas, and like the LLMs aren't great at that right now. But you know what they're really great at is like at some point at the end of the day, like some report has to be written or something like has to be, like you get to offload that now freely, I think. And so now it's maybe possible for the next 5 to 10 years as we sort of approach maybe AGI or ASI, like superintelligence, that we find that maybe they can have taste. And so I don't know if I take a principled stance that these must remain in the realm of humanity. I just think like we're very good at certain things as humans. And I think it's delightful that we now get to do more of the things that we are good at and find joy in, and can gradually offload increasingly to the AIs, things that like are, you know, the kind of the bullshit parts of our jobs sometimes.
what I'm hearing you say is it's like helps us be able to focus on our strengths and the things that we enjoy, that we're good at. We can do those more. We get to set aside some of the things that aren't so enjoyable. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's right. Now, again, like the LLM will not perfectly do those things oftentimes, as you will discover. But that's fine. Those are the things that you will like keep trying until they finally work as the models get better.
Yeah.
So,
Eli, are there moments in your week where you're consciously avoiding automating things or using different kinds of AI technologies? What are those?
Yeah, so this is, I'll take a kind of a loose definition of the word automated, but this is actually kind of my soapbox. I actually think that navigation tools like Google Maps are totally destroying our brains. And I would challenge everybody in here in this room to, when you go home today, especially if you're driving, try to do it without pulling up one of those mapping softwares and see if you can. See if you still have retained that skill that you probably had 10 years ago before it was commonplace. And the problem with that is that, like, map making is, in my opinion, like actually a very translatable skill to things like memory and understanding how things fit together. And so when we lose kind of that part of our brain, when it atrophies because we're not using it, suddenly everything else becomes harder. So, like, all of this is a bit of a microcosm for all of the things that are important for us to retain about our abilities as humans that we've kind of taught LLMs to do in a lot of ways, like being creative and writing and all of that stuff. But yeah, for me personally, it's navigation software. I think that stuff's the devil.
Note on liability: if you do decide to do that and it results in an accident tonight, Kalles Group or any of the sponsors tonight are not responsible. So, Mike, what about you? Are there moments in your week where you're intentionally avoiding things that you could be more productive at with the tool set? Are there areas where you specifically avoid using AI technologies?
Well, I mean, I think that's just true of technology in general. You got to have a shut it down moment. But what I will say in general, though, is I think actually AI makes us more human. And what I mean by that is humans and tools go together. Like, without tools, we're not humans. When we learned how to control fire, we were able to shorten our intestines and be able to develop a prefrontal cortex because we were able to get the nutrition out. And then it's just a story of one after another, us learning how to use tools and abstract concepts to be able to do bigger and bigger things. And so I actually think that we are at this point now where we're becoming something new. Like, it'll be on the chart. It'll be like, oh, this is when they diverged from being Homo sapien. And it's happening like right now, and that's just how we're going to look at it. But I think we should embrace that because it's actually a really beautiful thing that we are emerging and that we're capable of this. And I actually have a great story where I was sitting down with my 90-year-old grandpa who's like total Alzheimer's dementia at this point in time. So he's got like a 2-minute context window, and he asked me what I do, and so I sat down with him and I'm like, hey, Grandpa, let's actually make a song. And so I put in, like, this is my grandpa, his name's Doyle, he's from, this place in Idaho, he loves fishing. And so ChatGPT comes up with this song called Doyle Remembers. And I was like, who's your favorite musician? And like, he told me that, and I actually then took that exact thing, put it into Suno, and we played a song called Doyle Remembers in the Waylon Jennings, or whoever his person was, I can't remember the country singer. But like, my grandpa and I had one last moment of being able to share a moment of real, because that AI let me be more human with somebody that is on his way out, and like, that's beautiful. And as we push ourselves and as we realize that, like, everybody on our family tree going back like 100,000 generations had to survive. And it's been a story again and again of us being able to work together to overcome things, and that's what we all get to do. And like, literally this decade is going to be looked at as so much bigger than World War II and the Great Depression. Like, we are going through a change, and if we be optimistic about it and we don't try to fight it and we try to say, how can we be more human, I think it could be really beautiful.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a beautiful story. I think that's awesome. I think the some of what I wish we could bring the flavor of what you just said is, I know in some enterprise context, right, there is a lot of fear. There's fear around, I mean, even the topic of our conversation tonight of tool into a teammate. Teammate, that might, Bryon and I were talking about this earlier. There is fear around my job being replaced, or, what if my skill set becomes obsolete, or something else can do it better than I can. But I think a bit of a different reframe on that from what you're saying is perhaps we could see it in the lens of helping us become more of who we are as humans. So.
And even in that corporate setting, though, I actually think the storytelling emotional part of it is actually probably the biggest blocker. So if I was a consulting agency, I might think about how to do like a one-day session that led into a quarterly plan.
Yeah, helping people see the transformation behind it's more than just productivity, right? And I think stories really help unpack some of that.
And the stories, right? Like John Henry was a story that helped people go from being on farms to being industrial, because like John Henry was this guy that drove railroad nails. The guy comes in with a steam engine and he's like, look, I can do more than anybody. And John Henry's like, I'm stronger than that. And John Henry gets to, competition. They go build the thing. And John Henry wins and then dies immediately. And like that helps people understand staying at the farm is going to get harder and harder every year. Yeah. If I can learn to use this, I actually can live.
Yeah. Well, let's do this. I want to turn to the audience for some questions. I'd like to take a few minutes. Bryon, if I could just maybe pick your, put you on the hot seat. That's what I'm trying to say. Put you on the hot seat. Come up here. It's going to be easy. I'd just like you to walk around a microphone for us. We've got a few minutes to take some questions. I want to see what you guys are thinking. Let's field some questions, have our panel field some questions. Raise your hand if you've got a thought or something that you'd like to ask. So, Bryon, if you could take this and get our question. Hands up. Go closest first.
Hi. One thing I heard early tonight was that there's just so much noise. And one of the things I'd love to know from each of you is who are some of the thought leaders that you're listening to or paying attention to? As it relates to AI.
My personal favorite one is Karpathy, Karpathy. For those who don't know, he led the driverless car project at Tesla, and in particular, he led the transformation from into the world of transformers, which is the technology that backs these large language models. But he just has these really phenomenal takes, I think, on like what are large language models? How should we think about them? When do we apply them? My favorite one ever he explained is that that I've used ever since is that LLMs live in a dream world. It's not backed by any sort of concrete reality. They sort of dream things into existence all of the time, and oftentimes they dream in very productive directions for us. But what we call hallucinations for LLMs is all LLMs do. They just freely predict next tokens in some unknown space, basically. And oftentimes we get very good outcomes from that. But sometimes we don't, and that's why is that there is no factual fact. And he has so many great takes like this on helping us understand the trend and direction and stuff like that. So he's definitely worth following. He also does these really great multi-hour sessions where he'll just work through a problem live, and it gets a bit technical, but it's also just fascinating to follow along because they'll drop these nuggets about what's at the core of the transformer architecture that's making it work. And from that, it starts to go from this magical technology to no, it's not magic. There's actually a system to it, and it helps you realize that kind of how to think about it a little bit. So I love Karpathy a lot.
Yeah, a lot of the folks that I follow are actually, you would probably have never heard their name because they're just internal Microsoft research folks who just do some incredible work, and we get the privilege of seeing it just by being kind of part of the Microsoft research community. I think on a more just sort of straightforward basis, I really like Kevin Roos and Casey Newton. Casey Newton does platformer, Kevin Roos does hard fork. I think that they talk about AI in a really understandable way, and I really don't think that the issue with AI right now is on the PhD research side. I think it's with the productizing it side and figuring out what are the real use cases for average people. And a lot of times that's actually fairly divorced from what is on the bleeding edge of AI research. So because of that, I really like those guys. I think they distill it from a product perspective into who's using this, why are they using it, and that gets me thinking.
There's a YouTube channel called 3 Blue 1 Brown, like the numbers. And what they do is they animate what technically is happening in there. And so what helps is because it will show something that like would be something you would have learned at college, but if you do it on a whiteboard, like I wouldn't understand what he's talking about, but they animate it so well that you actually see the AI come to life. So now you have a mental framework for what's happening. And when you see people talk about a thing, now you can make connections better. Because you're really trying to build your own mental model for how this world works, because it doesn't work in the way the rest of the world works. But you actually start understanding your own mind better too, and you're like, oh, when I say the front of my mind, I'm talking about my context window. When I say the back of my mind, I'm talking about like I'm searching through the libraries, right? Like, and you're like, oh, when I say it came to mind, what I'm saying is I grabbed something that I wasn't thinking about and brought it into context. And when you start doing that, then the two worlds start to combine, and then you kind of just make the connections because you're probably an expert in something. And when you make those connections, now you're the best in the world because you are an expert at that thing and you know this thing.
Thanks for the question, Lori. Yeah, Bryon, if we could go to,
Who's next?
let's go to Peter up here in the front.
Thank you. So I have a question for you, Mike. So you were talking about how we need to start seeing, as a matter of cultural change, individuals within a particular workplace as agents themselves. And often we hear about how the way that you really change culture is top down. You need to have that buy-in from leadership. So just to make sure that I'm understanding you correctly, in your experience, do you find that certain levels of leadership are able to affect greater change or change quicker, if I'm understanding you correctly? I'd love to know just what you think are kind of like the best strategies if one wanted to be proactive about that, just moving forward within their organization.
I mean, anytime I interact with corporations, it's not inside of it. Like, I am so like there's a lot of people that would be better to talk to about that, because I wouldn't survive for a few weeks in one of these places. Like, I've already broken 3 HR rules, and I'm being nice right now. But I think what I would say to that is, as the individual in that system, realize that that system is about to try to cause change on you. And if you can get slightly in front of it, you can probably surf a wave. Whereas if you're behind it, you're probably going to be paddling to catch up. And the difference between those two is really hard. So I would, as an individual in a company, I would be like, oh, this is the fight for my agency, and I basically have a few months right now to get ahead of it.
Thank you.
Let's go, yeah, how about Will? I saw your hand.
Thank you. This is actually kind of a follow-up on that culture change, and especially corporate American culture. Now, I love your answer about you being your own agent and being ahead of the game. However, we live in a country where corporate America does not like you being your own agent. It's more about protecting managerial, upper levels. You just said it that you're going to break 3 HR rules, and the thing is that in many corporate America, and I'm not talking a lot of startups, I'm talking corporate America, that even tech corporate America that drive huge amounts of revenue, are not looking for their individuals to be agents. They're looking to reduce their agent cost, to be euphemistic. And I guess my question is, how do we help these organizations realize that what would be better is to have their people be their own agents and get that agency back to the be more productive. The idea of productivity versus the company's going to be more productive by reducing agents.
I think we understood your question. I think Eli is ready to take a stab at this. So let's start with you, Eli.
Yeah, I know a thing or two about working for a large company in corporate America. So Yeah, I think that the top-down change that you were alluding to is very difficult. We've had mandates that everybody in our org has to use more AI. In fact, it was just recently added as a criteria in our performance evaluations. So they're trying to do it, but it's like we're an AI org, and there's still, it's very nascent how people have adopted it. So here's the way that I would say that this can happen in a really positive way. So it kind of stems from this idea that I would call like the AI research loop. And it's the idea that, my job, which is AI research, each component of it can be automated, right? But you still need a human in the loop to oversee what is actually happening. And I think what you're going to see is each individual is going to become owner of their own agent that is kind of focused on their domain. And as the domain expert, they will continue to oversee and to guide that agent. So like my advice to people who are worried about agents replacing their jobs is actually, why don't you get started mapping out what you do and how you could be more productive by automating pieces of it, and rather than being replaced by an agent, own that agent that will do your job even more effectively. And I think that's the frame that folks will be adopting, is not this thing is going to replace me, but rather I'm going to oversee this thing as it does my job faster and more effectively than I could without it.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I think I want to take, Bryon, there you are. Let's go. How about Jeanette here up front? Let's take a question from you.
Thank you, and I hope you'll allow me 2 questions. Because my first question is, what was the last AI tool that you used, and what was the prompt that you put into it? But then kind of building off of what you just were saying, so today, I'm pushing everybody like learn AI and adapt to it, and don't lose your job that way. But my daughter is about to be 16, and so she's going to go to university soon, and okay, 5 years from now, what should she be doing now to be successful 5 years from now, if you can kind of look forward a little bit? So 2 questions.
Let's see if we can do a quick take. Last AI tool you used, what do you need to be doing now to be successful in 5 years?
I used our tool that's called Souls. It's an AI that you actually own, and we don't want any company to actually, like, you own the keys. It's actually on the block. Your user account is on the blockchain. You don't need to check in with anybody, and everything's on your computer unless you want to call something in. So we've got that. As for a 16-year-old, it's hard. I got a 14-year-old right now, right? And I would say find something you love and just go all in on that thing, because that love and that passion is going to bring optionality for the tools. And I actually think the tools are more about discovery and being okay with them, because they're going to get better faster than you're going to learn them.
I think right before I walked up here, I asked ChatGPT, why the hell isn't this working? And I copy and pasted some code that I had written. And it did, in fact, tell me. So that was great. I don't know how broadly general, but I do find curse words and threats, by the way, are great for getting better outcomes from LLMs. If you haven't tried it, I swear. Actually, Sergey Brin just talked about this, that like for some reason, if you threaten them with physical violence, you get even better outcomes. So like, I'm not saying how far you should take that. I'm just saying it's worth experimenting with.
Zach, I think that works on people too.
Yeah, well, yeah, they are trained on a lot of human stuff. So I'll just throw that out there.
Children learn the same way. It just gets scary later.
Yes, exactly. I've tried it with my 5-year-olds, and threats and incentives. It's we all the same way. I have an almost 6-year-old. I think about this all the time. Like, what world is she going to grow up in? I have no idea how to reason about it. Like, again, like you said, we're on this curve, and it's like trying to predict what the curve looks like when you're on the exponential is like insane. So I agree with this. Like, I think you find what you like. I will say, like, maybe this is, I'll be completely wrong here. I do think people are like, you don't need to learn how to code anymore and stuff like that. I firmly believe like understanding how systems work, especially as the world becomes increasingly driven by software systems, understanding how software operates at a foundational level, I think will almost always be beneficial, even if you're not writing the software. It just helps you reason about how the world is stitched together. And that makes you, I think, very powerful. It also just makes you a good thinker, because it forces you to think step by step and how to break problems down algorithmically. So like, I will be encouraging my daughter to program. We tried already. It's not working at 6 yet, but we'll try again in a couple of years.
Last tool was Copilot Studio. Right before I came here, I was giving a demo to my boss on something called agentic RAG, which is basically when you let the LLM do the retrieval, which is kind of cool. And the prompt was, it was kind of a fun demo. It was basically, I was just saying, if I was going to move from California to Washington, how would my health benefits change? It was a demo for a healthcare bot. So the advice, though, that I would give, I think, is very much like an extension of what Zach has said, which is just like focus on learning how things about the world work, because the easier things get, right, and the more that these tools remove our need to understand how things work, the more valuable the people that really do understand how they work become. And so, yeah, I mean, like, learn to code, like, learn how your car works, learn how, just basic stuff, right? Like, I think that there is increasingly, like, a lost sense of every person being capable and being able to do things, physical things, mental things, emotional things. And so I think, like, that's what I would focus on is taking on those challenges.
Let's do one more question. Bryon, if you would, gentleman right next to the camera here.
So I spent probably too many years not writing code, but the last 3 months I've gone pretty deep. Like, I'm all in. I don't know why an LLM might need to code for 7 hours. Like, I heard like that was a thing. I'm finding I can do a lot more, but when it goes off the rails, it really goes off the rails. I'd like it to roll back my context when I need to roll back my code. And I'd like it to learn from me. And then ultimately, I really just want to deploy my own army of agents. Army of coding agents, army of marketing agents, army of SDRs. Where are you pushing the boundaries of these technologies today? Like, where are you finding that it's breaking for you? And then when do you think I can deploy army of agents so that I can just run my own company by myself?
You want to start?
Well, I'm trying to think of the exact name of it because I've only used it 2 or 3 times, but our engineers right now have been testing out OpenAI's new at their $200 price point. They've got this new system you plug straight into your GitHub repo, and you give it a task. And one of the reasons it does it for a long time is that it's kind of like there's a whole company of agents that are listening to what you're doing, and they're kind of debating amongst each other and then fixing the code and bug editing, and they can go on for a long time. But like that's kind of the default there. But I think you're absolutely right. I think you should see it as you're the CEO of a company right now, and you could have as big of a company, like even as Microsoft, by yourself, that could scale to that within 20 years. Like literally one person will be able to run things at that scale.
So I spend all my days like thinking about like the structure of models and how we train them, and so I'll try not to go like super deep, but like I think at a superficial level, I think that there are some sort of foundational problems that you will run into with the current like sort of limitations of large language models. Like as your conversation grows, they get dumber, it seems, and like why do they get dumber? Well, we largely know that like as the context windows grows, like their ability to attend, aka focus on the key parts, diminishes pretty considerably. We also know that like chat models, as you get into conversation, they get about 30% dumber over the course of that time. Like a great paper just came out actually from some folks finally measuring for the first time intelligence degradation. I think that like humans have this remarkable ability to continue to learn and update our priors. Like it's like the weights in our own models, like in our brains, are updating as we live our lives. We don't know how to do that yet with large language models. And so I think there's some foundational problems that exist in the transformer architecture that like I think is like where almost all of the attention is at in some cases. Like how do we expand context windows? How do we like stretch the attention mechanism? And then you have players like, but a lot of these super intelligence labs, what they're trying to do is like, pragmatically speaking, you hit a lot of walls right now. My guess, this is bold, if people disagree with me, you probably might just get the hardest mic, because I think you're probably like, my guess would be like 5 years away, 5 to 7 years away from being able to like have truly autonomous, like to manage that one person agency. I just think like from an architectural level, there are some foundational limitations that we have no evidence of models surpassing yet. Novel ideas is a great example of this. You don't have one yet. And so I think we'll get there, but I do think that that's what you're hitting, is you're hitting like there's just some like stupid ways these models sort of are structured that's really incredible, but has these obvious limitations. But I do think we'll get there over some window of time.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, the limitation continues to be on integrations. That has, for a very long time, been the limitation of modern software, is how do different systems talk to each other, and can you get the information structured in a way that you can make sense of it? And that continues, and that's why MCP, which we haven't talked about at all today, but I'm sure is, because we're avoiding the buzzwords, but Model Context Protocol is, this concept of agents talking to each other. And I'm not as pessimistic about the model's capability to do this as I am about the integration and how do you like plumb the pipes. Because from an implementation standpoint, what I see with customers, what I see with like big enterprises, the models are fine. The models are great. The models are not where the failures happen. The failures happen at things like a retrieval step, because you can't integrate with an API effectively enough to get the chunks back that you need, or because you can't send an action to an API to go book a flight or something. Like it's the integration, not the model for me. That's the limitation. But that may also be because that's where I spend most of my time, is focused on, okay, how do we actually get products out the door that people can use, and what's the limiting factor there?
Finally get into the debates here.
I think we're gonna.
He has been up the whole time, by the way. I will say, if you have time for one more, he was one of the very first ones.
Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna keep taking your questions, but we're gonna do it in a conversational format because we are at time, and I want to respect your time. But first of all, thank you, each of you. Thank you, each of you, for showing up. Thank you for showing up with your thoughts, your input, questions. I feel like we've kind of scratched a bit of the surface, and if we had more time, we could probably go quite a bit deeper, genuinely. But thank you for coming. What I'd like you to do, mark your calendars. This is not the last Smart Cookies event. September 10th is our next Smart Cookies event. So mark your calendars for that. There's this QR code up behind me. Scan that. You can RSVP to be the first to hear about our event once we roll it out. And we got plenty of cookies left, I believe, and plenty of drinks. So take one home with you if you haven't had a chance to eat one yet. And stick around. These guys are going to stick around for a bit and ask each other, share with one another some of the things that stood out to you tonight. Thanks for coming.